One thing that students have had challenges with in some of my previous classes is understanding the differences between independent variables and dependent variables. Independent variables, sometimes we shorten to capital I, capital V, and dependent variables, sometimes we shorten to capital D, capital B. So we always have in an experiment, we're always going to have at least two variables. Remember, variables are things that vary. Makes sense, right? So age, shoe size, number of stuffed animals, number of coffee cups, number of pets you have, all of those are variables. They're all things that vary, right? And also we want to make sure that we can somehow um, put this variable into a number. So, number of stuffed animals, super easy. Number of pets, super easy, right? Age, super easy. Now, we also might want to ask students how um, motivated do they feel to do their coursework. So we could do that on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all, 5 being completely, and that would be a variable as well. Okay. So when we're doing an experiment, we have the independent variable that is what we are doing to our participants, whereas the dependent variable depends upon what happened with the independent variable, and the dependent variable will be what we assess. So let me give you an example. Um, if we have a experiment that we are doing, we have two college classes, and they are both the same college classes. So that is a control variable, meaning they're same class, like they're both social psychology. Okay. So that is a control variable. And in one of the classes, the students receive weekly emails from the instructor, encouraging them to do their work, telling them what their work is, attempting to motivate them. And in another class, or the second class, they do not receive any sort of email from the instructor on Monday. Okay, so again, we've got two classes. We've got our control class, which does not receive the email. They have no experimental manipulation. Okay. Whereas the group that receives the class that receives the email is receiving the experimental manipulation. Now, at the end of the semester, we're going to look at the grades and we're going to see what the grade distribution looks like and see if there's any differences between the average grade in the course for the control group who did not receive the emails and the experimental group who did receive the emails. Okay, so that's a very simple experimental design. We only have two levels of the independent variable, which is the manipulation variable or what we're changing. So don't always think manipulation sounds bad. So we only have two levels of it: no email and email. Okay, so your independent variable is whether or not the students receive the email. And we have two levels of it: no and yes. Okay. And then we have a dependent variable that we assess, and that would be the average score for the class for the control class and the experimental class. Because we assume as researchers that the average score will depend upon whether or not they were in the class that received the emails or they were in the class that did not receive the emails. So in that example, our independent variable is email versus no email, and our dependent variable is average score for the class. Okay, because we assume that the average score for the class depends upon, thus it is the dependent variable, what type of class you were in for the independent variable. Does that make sense? Let's do another one. we have two groups of folks who are experiencing loneliness. Okay. So we recruited a sample from San Antonio, so it would be a convenience sample, right? And we asked people who do not have pets to participate in our study. And then we um, randomly assigned them to group A or group B. So again, we've got two levels of the independent variable here, okay? Because we've got two groups. One group is going to be our control group, and one group is going to be our group that will foster an animal, cat or dog. Um, Actually, let's make it more simple. It's just a dog, okay? So the group two is going to foster an animal for 6 weeks. At the end of the 6 weeks, we are going to assess the participants, all participants, on a loneliness scale. Okay. And so what we expect is that there will be differences in the average loneliness score based upon whether we were in the no pet or pet condition. Okay. So independent variable here would be whether or not the participants fostered a dog. And then the dependent variable would be their scores on the loneliness questionnaire. And as I said, the assumption is that the experimental group who were fostering an animal would experience less loneliness than the control group who were not fostering an animal. Okay. So hopefully those two examples and some more discussion about it help you to be able to look at an experiment and figure out what is an independent variable and what is a dependent variable. The easiest way I've said for me to remember is that what we assess of the dependent variable, we assume is going to depend upon what level, so experimental or control group, or if we have like 5 different experimental levels, what level of the independent variable you were in. Does that make sense? If you have more questions, please feel free to comment on this video and I will get those questions answered as soon as I can. Thanks.